Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this CUFI interview with our good friend Steven Jaffe. How are you, Steven?
Good. In the circumstances, Des, I'm doing well, thank you, and it's lovely to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you too. Although my hair, like yours, is a bit longer than normal.
Absolutely.
Stephen, tell us a bit first about who you are, what you do, so that our audience can understand.
Well, Des, I think we've known each other for quite a number of years. So my job is within the Jewish community in the UK. I've acted over the years as consultants to Jewish community organisations. So, for example, the Board of Deputies of British Jews, which is like a representative body for the Jewish community in the UK, the Jewish Leadership Council, which brings together the chief executives of the main Jewish community bodies, and doing a lot of work now with Magen UK, which is a support group for Israel's national medical emergency service, which you can imagine is very much in the front line in terms of the current coronavirus. But a very important part of the work that I've been doing is outreach from the Jewish community to friends of Israel across the UK, in particular from the Christian community. And I consider it a huge privilege and honor to be part of a bridge really between the Jewish community and its Christian friends, working with all the ministries in the UK, which has an Israel orientation, and really particularly honored to be working with yourselves at CUFI.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I certainly remember the first time we well, not the first time we met, but the first time we were sort of really encouraged by your sort of participation was obviously 5 years ago. We had our launch event in London at the Emmanuel Centre. Yeah. And I remember we pitched it for a Saturday night because we were looking for a Christian audience to come along to our launch event to sort of support CUFI. And it was our first event in London. And I remember on a very rainy night, you had walked a long way to be there. So tell us a bit about that.
Well, I live in northwest London, in that part of the city where the Jewish community is very much well, it's the stronghold of the Jewish community in northwest London. But I saw this event coming along, and I really felt it was important for the Jewish community to support it and to be seen to support it. Now, normally I would not attend an event during the Jewish Sabbath, during the Shabbat. I'm quite observant, so for example, I don't take transport during the Shabbat. So this was a bit of a challenge. It's about, I would say, about a 10-mile walk from where I live in northwest London right into Westminster to where you were holding it. But I really wanted to be there. I knew CUFI in its American operation as being a massive organization, really so supportive of Israel, bringing in millions of supporters. Pastor John Hagee, as its leader, was speaking at the launch event in the UK. I was really interested to hear that. But I wanted to show support. I really wanted to be there amongst Christian friends of Israel in the UK to show that visually that we were there to encourage each other, to support each other in the shared cause of standing with Israel, of fighting anti-Semitism, and that we in the Jewish community should never take for granted that support that there is in the Christian community, those who want to stand with us. And I saw the CUFI setting up here in the UK as being an important event, an important milestone, if you like, in that partnership between the Jewish community and our Christian friends.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, certainly we were so encouraged by you attending. I mean, obviously there weren't that many Jewish people there on the night because it was a Shabbat, and it was in June, of course. So Shabbat came sort of early on, sort of very late. You had to wait for a long time before getting home even, I guess.
Well, I have to say, well remembered, Des, that it was raining that day. It wasn't raining when I set off from northwest London, but yes, it did rain that day, absolutely. But it was, I have to say, such an inspiring and encouraging event. The Emmanuel Centre was full. and there was plenty of energy. And hearing Pastor Hagee for the first time, seeing, you know, the aura of the man, it was for me well worth the walk by every means.
Yeah, well, certainly we certainly enjoyed the night. We were actually quite fortunate for the rain. I know it affected you, but we were warned that we were going to get quite a lot of opposition and that people were going to be protesting outside the building. But the rain was so intense, actually, that it stopped people from doing that. So we were quite pleased that we were able to go ahead without too many problems. Also, I mean, I know we launched on that occasion our first campaign, actually, about Christians against anti-Semitism. And I know quite soon after that, we saw you at one of the CRE events where we had an exhibition stand. You know, obviously promoting that campaign to a Christian audience. And we certainly had lots of discussions with lots of people who came through those exhibitions. And I know the Jewish community were encouraged to see that someone was making a stand in quite a public way on behalf of or against anti-Semitism.
Well, it was very, very timely, Daz. Unfortunately, we live in an age where anti-Semitism is not a historic memory of what happened in previous times. It's resurgent. It's resurgent online. So-called social media has been a tremendous platform for hate, very sadly, and much of it directed against the Jewish community. And think of what's happened in the UK in recent years in terms of anti-Semitism actually featuring as part of the mainstream politics of this country. It shows you how timely it was, the stand that you made with that initial petition and the work that you continue to do to educate those in the church, in particular, really about a legacy of anti-Semitism which had been allowed to fester even within the church over centuries and even to our own time. The way that you've confronted that and just the quality of the material that CUFI produces in terms of online material, in terms of the booklets and the regular publications, really driving home the message that anti-Semitism is, you cannot be a believing Christian and hold anti-Semitism in your heart. And I think you've made that point emphatically in the work that you do. And for the Jewish community, that is extremely encouraging and significant that it's coming from a Christian source, because sadly, some Jewish people will say to me, the churches are anti-Semitic, they always have been and they always will be. So by you making that very loud stand that you, as you do as a campaigning organization, I think is addressing some education within the Jewish community to understand that not all Christians are the same, that they don't all hold the same theological positions, and the work that you're doing is directed very often to the churches, but I think it's important for the Jewish community to recognize and acknowledge that there are Christians and Christian organizations here in the UK that are working day and night to expose and challenge anti-Semitism.
That's right. I mean, we've always taken the view that we wanted to work together with the Jewish community. And so we've tried to do that wherever possible. Because I remember, obviously, the Shalom Initiative, which you were advocating, and CUFI came on board with that. The postcard campaign, maybe you could say a bit about that.
So the Shalom Initiative, we had initially, it was a declaration for Christians to sign. It's the declaration said that as Christians, it was specifically for Christians to sign, both an acknowledgement of the importance of the land of Israel and Hebrew scripture to the Christian faith, to talk about modern Israel and its contribution in technology and in health and so many good things, and to make a public stand against anti-Semitism and extremism, which is something which, of course, is not just directed against Jews. We're talking about an age of unprecedented martyrdom within the Christian world in the Middle East and in other parts of the world. Other groups are facing persecution as well, that Jews and Christians should stand together. So that was the initial Shalom Declaration. And what I found was really significant about that initiative was, firstly, it was coming from the Jewish community, and therefore all the Christian ministries within Israel Focus felt able to participate, and that was important in itself. And beyond the kind of the main organizations, individual churches wanted to show their support. So we had literally churches from Anglesey, from north of Scotland, from Jersey and the Channel Islands. It really brought out that this was a national sentiment within the churches of wanting to stand with the Jewish people in a shared love of Hebrew scripture, shared love of the land of Israel, a shared need to stand against extremism and persecution. And so that was something which again was a bit of a educational process for the Jewish community, to say that, look, we have friends right across the country. The Jewish community is very much concentrated in small parts, so in northwest London, in parts of Manchester, one or two other places, you've got significant Jewish communities. But beyond that, the Jewish communities are very small in the UK and declining. They're elderly in demographic. So our knowledge of what's going on in places outside our own sphere and circles is quite limited, and the Shalom Declaration was an initial step to say that this is actually national, that there, for instance, inner city churches, black majority churches, rural churches, they were all signing the Shalom Declaration. I can't give you the bottom line of how many churches signed, but it was hundreds. And then we got individual Christians saying, we want to sign this too. And so we've got a website, and about 4,000 names are listed there. And off the back of the Shalom Declaration, we ran the postcards for Jerusalem campaign. It was, the idea was that people would write into our Foreign Office to remind them that Jerusalem was a free city, that we as Jews and Christians are free to visit, free to worship in, that it was a city that granted freedom of worship to all its citizens and visitors, Muslim, Jewish, Christian. That was the basic point that we wanted our Foreign Office to acknowledge and to show that there were British people who regarded this as something actually, as a huge blessing that we should never take for granted. That we can visit Jerusalem as a free, united city that grants freedom of worship to both its residents and its visitors. I think in the current crisis where we can't visit Jerusalem because of the coronavirus, we know even more what a blessing it is that we could just get on a plane and visit Jerusalem. And CUFI were one of a number of organizations that really supported this. You got well over, I think, 2,000 postcards, Des, and we spent a day at Westminster, met Sir Eric Pickles, who was then a Conservative MP, he's now in the House of Lords, and a great friend of the Jewish community. And it was great for him to see the support coming from outside the Jewish community. He was quite encouraged in that regarding the work that he does, in particular regarding Holocaust remembrance. I think we had a great conversation with Sir Eric. And then I remember we walked to the Foreign Office with quite a heavy case full of these postcards that your supporters from around the country had signed. We actually went to the front desk of the Foreign Office. We plonked it on the guy who was working there, and so that they could see something physical and tangible. It was about, I think, well over, in terms of the total campaign, well over 6,000 postcards were sent in. I thought that was, you know, we're often signing things online, online petitions, email campaigns. They're very, very important. But I thought a tangible postcard with a beautiful picture of Jerusalem on the front, with a printed message on the back, coming from Christians and Jews from around the country, made a particular message. And I have to say, we got a response from the Foreign Office. Do you remember what that said, Des? Shall I remind you?
Oh, please remind me, yeah.
A cool response from our office civil servants. So it's really, really important. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why we adopted this campaign. A number of years ago, I was in Washington with a Jewish, British Jewish community delegation, and we went to see the British ambassador in Washington as a Jewish and pro-Israel delegation. And our ambassador said to us, he said, "How wonderful to see you," he said, "because we don't hear very much from supporters of Israel in the UK. We get a pile of correspondence from those who are critical of Israel," and he made a gesture with his hands to say it's this high. "And, you know, the friends of Israel, we only get this much." And I thought, well, you know, what a lesson for us, that we have to be making noise ourselves. We have to be campaigning, and let's give the ambassador and his foreign office a pile of postcards that are this high, which they received. So I'm very grateful to the support that CUFI gave. It was a very significant part of that campaign, and on top of everything else that I know that you've done over the years, I thought, you know, yes, the working together of the Jewish community and yourselves and the other Christian ministries in that campaign was significant, and I think made that little bit of a change of thought, perhaps, in the Foreign Office. Remember, Boris Johnson was the Foreign Secretary at that time, so perhaps we just made a little bit of a jolt in their normal way of thinking.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, certainly we've continued to advocate for better relations from the Foreign Office. We do feel that they need to change their policies in some areas related to Israel. They've had a long-standing sort of platform in place, let's say, where they've gone about things in a certain way, but we now feel that it's time to change, and so we're advocating on that basis. So that was one of our first campaigns, so we were pleased to be part of that. I mean, we were pleased as well because, as you mentioned, CUFI is across the country. I remember when we first started talking to Israel-Britain Alliance about campaigning, what they liked about us coming on board was the fact that we had supporters from the north to the south, east to the west, and it's quite interesting to see that. Whereas many of the other sort of Friends of Israel groups are much more localized, we can be a national organization with supporters across the country, and that obviously impacts on us when we do our campaigns to our individual MPs. More MPs are being touched as a result, so it's important. But yeah, we will continue to keep knocking on the door of the Foreign Office to try and get them to change. That would be great. Obviously, the other thing you were part of as well is in 2016 we had our Night to Honor Israel in London, and we've just premiered that actually on social media for those people who weren't able to see it back then. You know, we've kept it sort of in our lockers ever since, and we thought it would be a good thing during this time of shutdown to show that. But of course, you were there on the night, weren't you? What do you remember about the event?
I felt it's one thing to start an organization with a lot of fanfare. That's an achievement in itself. To keep the organization going and growing is another challenge. So I thought the event in 2016 demonstrated to me that CUFI UK was here to stay, that it wasn't just a wonderful one-off event, that you had momentum and drive behind you. Again, Pastor Hagee was speaking, and there was a very good crowd in central London again to demonstrate to me, and there were more Jewish people present. It wasn't on a Shabbat, was it? It was I think.
No, it was a Thursday night actually.
Yes,
to make room for the Jewish community to come.
So I could take the tube there, Des, which was a real luxury. So yes, there were more Jewish people. I think Simon Johnson, who's the chief executive of the Jewish Leadership Council, actually spoke on the evening.
He did, yeah.
Bringing us together very, very effectively. So I'm delighted that you're giving your supporters the opportunity to watch it. I think it's really important at this time of kind of lockdown, when many of our wonderful supporters are in isolation, shielding, that we reach out and engage and give them the enthusiasm, the engagement that they need, because I think they're the unsung heroes of this crisis in our country at the moment, particularly more senior citizens who are perhaps not seeing their family. So I think it's wonderful what you're doing, giving the opportunity of reaching out to these people in their homes, and they can watch this really quite inspiring event. I think it was Colonel Kemp was chairing it, who's obviously a fantastic communicator as well. So, and there was some wonderful musical interludes.
Yes.
There was a
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think wonderful that that people can at this time benefit from it. I think it's a great initiative.
Well, certainly over the last couple of years, we've been doing regional conferences around the country. And actually, for 2020, we had planned to do another Night to Honor Israel in London. But obviously, the current lockdown has put that on hold. So we're waiting to see how quickly things start opening up and whether we may, well, we almost certainly will have to defer it till next year. But there was certainly something about bringing, well over 1,000 people together into one location. It's something we only sort of remember in hearsay now, but hindsight. But it was a great event, and you're right. I was when I was watching the briefing the other day. I saw it before it went out. Seeing Colonel Richard Kemp. I mean, we'd always had him as a speaker before, but to have him as our master of ceremonies, I mean, I hadn't realised his sense of humour. And so it makes for a very interesting evening. I mean, keeping the whole schedule on time was a critical one. We had lots of different speakers, but it was a very worthwhile, as you say, inspiring, encouraging night. And so that's still available for our supporters to watch, even if they didn't see it on the premiere sort of night. So that's hopefully people will follow up on that. Yeah. I also wanted to ask you a bit about your family, because I remember when we first, well, not when we first met, but certainly your son was, or you were had concerns, and we were actually, Remy and I prayed for you and your family for nearly a whole year. Not every day, but we certainly had a regular time when we would pray for you, because we felt that certainly, as having started CUFI, we wanted a Jewish connection. I'd previously been involved with many sort of organizations which were pro-Israel, but didn't actually meet with many Jewish people. They were mostly Christians supporting Israel in an indirect way. And the great thing about CUFI is we've actually had that sort of regular contact with the Jewish community. And that's been a real encouragement for us.
I think it also characterizes the organization in the States as well. So for instance, really kind of inspirational figures for me in my own work from the Jewish community and outreach to the Christian world, people like David Brogg, who was very much involved with CUFI from the Jewish community in the States, like the wonderful Victor Stursky, and I've read Victor's book. I think it's Questions That Jewish People Need Answered from Christian Zionists. It's fascinating and it's encouraging. Yes, I think that the point that you make is a valid one. To be friends of Israel and friends of the Jewish community, it's not an abstract theological principle. It might be that, but to actually turn it into flesh and blood, friendship, trust, relationship, that takes it from on a different plane altogether. People often talk about interfaith dialogue. Now, dialogue to me is a word which sounds clinical, it sounds cold, it sounds theoretical, restrained, formal. But friendship and fellowship is something very, very different. And once you engage with people on an emotional level, as well as just a kind of abstract level, then I think trust comes. And you've touched my heart by saying that you prayed for my family regularly. That's just so, it's wonderful to hear and not taken for granted. My son was 17 when he made the decision that he was going to make Aliyah, which means to go and emigrate to Israel. He had plans to go to university here in the UK. He had a number of places he could have taken up, but he made that decision. Now, because he went there so young, he had to do his whole military service as an Israeli citizen. Israeli citizens, of course, boys have to do 3 years. Which he willingly did. He felt that was something that would be important for his integration as an Israeli, but that was quite a big sacrifice for a young man to make. He could have delayed his aliyah to avoid that if he so chose. And today, thank God, he's well settled in Israel. He's got a good job. He's obviously at the moment impacted by the quite severe lockdown that they had in Israel regarding the current crisis. But thankfully, Israel seems to have come through this with a death total. You know, one individual is a tragedy, but there's just over 200 Israelis have lost their lives. And in a country of 9 million people, that's a very low rate. So they did go through quite a severe and early lockdown. My son was telling me about it. They weren't allowed to go perhaps more than 100 meters from where they were living, unless it was to purchase food. Having to wear a mask in public in Israel, that's a requirement. So they're now coming out of this quite severe lockdown, but thank God, and they're not taking anything for granted, because this is a very unpredictable crisis. But as things stand, I think we in the UK and other countries have lessons to learn from Israel and how they experienced it. But to go back to your point about family and friendships and prayer, having a son so far away is not easy when we think all of a sudden we can't go and visit him. You suddenly become to realize the importance of family, of loved ones. I think we're all feeling that from all our different backgrounds and faith communities. Family means a lot. You know, running around before the crisis, you know, things that dominated people's lives. Was it going shopping? Was it going to a sports event, a concert, or whatever? We can't do that anymore. And all of a sudden, family is our loved ones. So I thank you for that prayer that you held us in for such a long period of time, particularly when Aryeh was doing his military service. It's not something that I in any way take lightly, and I know many other people did as well, and I appreciate it, and I'm very grateful for it.
Well, certainly we pray for the Jewish community. I mean, obviously, what about the Jewish community here in the UK? I mean, I think they're suffering a bit more from this coronavirus situation than most, actually.
So sadly does, yes. So the fact is the Jewish community, as I've said already, they're concentrated in small areas. They tend to be urban areas. So where we live in Northwest London has been badly affected generally, but the Jewish community there also badly affected. We tend to be an older community. If you look at our demographics, we tend to be slightly older than the national average. So those factors, as well as the fact that Jewish community life is very communal. A Jewish community worship, so a observant Orthodox Jewish man, because it is men, would be worshipping in a congregational setting 3 times a day. Now, we shut our synagogues before the national lockdown, the Shabbat before the Prime Minister's announcement. But looking back before then, before the government imposing the lockdown, we had a festival like Purim. We had our normal Shabbat services, our daily services, a very communal way of life, which means that sadly the disease, which was already present in the UK before the lockdown, of course, was able to spread within the Jewish community quite quickly. And sadly, yes, our figures, I think, are well over 300 have lost their lives. We're only we're much less than 1% of the UK population. I think not even half of 1% of the UK population. So that is quite disproportionately high. It seems that way at the moment. We've lost some very senior members of our community, rabbis from different strands of the Jewish community, both Reform rabbis, strictly Orthodox rabbis, lovely revered figures. So yes, it's been a tough time. We understand this is a global crisis. We're there with our fellow citizens here in the UK with we're looking at what's going on in Israel, the Jewish community worldwide, and globally. It's a tough time for all of us. I think that kind of friendship between Jews and Christians is hugely important, that ability to reach beyond ourselves, both to show compassion practically, reaching out in telephone messages. I'm spending quite a bit of my time ringing up both Jewish and Christian friends, people I've met along the way over the last journey of my work over the last 10 years, ringing people up who are perhaps on their own and just saying, thinking of you. Yes, you're mentioned in prayers. It's encouraging not just for them, it's encouraging for me too. And I'll just give you a very brief example of it, Des. I spoke to a Christian lady in Cambridgeshire yesterday. She lives in a rural setting. There's no big community around her. The post lady, who's only in her 20s, said to this Christian lady, "How are you getting your shopping?" She was the lady was a bit concerned. She hadn't got some of the things that she needed. The post lady, young woman, came back later that day having done that woman's shopping.
Yeah.
I just think, wow. I came off that call a bit teary, actually, quite emotional. The post woman who's, probably got a family of her own, has a difficult job. She was so minded about this particular woman and her problems, and to do something practical to support. So encouraging and inspiring stories are out there at this time as well.
Yeah, it's good to hear, actually. I say we're looking at ways that we can support. Obviously, if you have any issues that you feel we could CUFI could get behind, then please let us know. We're always, we have this social media sort of group. Probably we have almost as many Christians following us on social media as the whole of the Jewish community in the UK. So we're there to support you. So, we want to continue to do that even during times of lockdown. One of the things I was really hoping to do this year anyway was join you for one of your walking tours, which I guess is now currently on hold. But tell us about those. They sound very interesting.
So in the centre of London, right in the heart of Westminster, I was running a tour, both for Jews and Christians, and for anyone who was interested, giving 1,000 years of British Jewish history in just under an hour. So it's quite a challenge, a task. But really, there was a lot to be said of events which had taken place within really a mile of where the tour took place, which was just outside the Houses of Parliament in Parliament Square, going right back to the medieval Jewish community. There's quite a shocking story. I won't give away everything on the tour, but just how I began it was there is a statue outside the Houses of Parliament, you might picture it, of Richard the Lionheart on a horse with a sword. It's just outside the entrance to the House of Lords. Mm-hmm. And Richard the Lionheart had his coronation right there at Westminster Abbey, and there was a celebration at the Palace of Westminster, which is where Parliament stands today. And there was an edict before the coronation to say that no Jews were allowed to attend the Palace of Westminster at the time of the coronation. And we know that, we're not sure why, but a delegation of Jews from around England, from York and elsewhere, arrive bearing gifts for the king at the coronation, and presumably unaware of the edict. They're blocked from entry. The crowd outside, they attack the Jews. Over 30 are killed. And then there's an attack on the Jewish community right across London, spreads across England, and it culminates in the massacre of York, when hundreds of Jews many of them took their own lives in Clifford Tower, on the site of where Clifford Tower is now in York. But that all started at Westminster in London. And I make the point that so few of the people who work at Westminster as MPs or as civil servants will know that history happened exactly there. And I take the story right the way through of the Jewish expulsion in 1290. Again, the decision was made there at Westminster. The readmission of Jews under Oliver Cromwell, and the intervention of a Jewish rabbi called Manasseh ben Israel, who came from Europe. They held a conference at Whitehall in Westminster about the issue of Jews being readmitted into England. We cross the road at that point to Parliament Green. We talk about Disraeli, the first, if you like, Jewish Prime Minister. We talk about the Balfour Declaration and the importance of Christian support in the cabinet for the Balfour Declaration. Take the story up to date. We talk about Winston Churchill in the Second World War, very fitting, of course, for VE celebrations that we've just marked. Talk about Britain's stand regarding the fight against Hitler, but also talking about the Mandate period and Britain's mixed record as the Mandate power in pre-state Israel. I talk about right up to date, so Margaret Thatcher and modern day conservatism. Talk about the demonstration that took place outside Westminster a couple of years ago about the rise of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. So there you have it, in a nutshell. I've given you the tour, 1,000 years of British Jewish history, but they were great because they really were bringing together Christians and Jews in a shared interest in this.
Yeah.
And I very much hope, please God, in better times that we can restart them. And it would be wonderful to see you, Des, and family and others to London to do that particular tour. Please God.
It sounds incredibly interesting, and I mean, we recognise that area of Westminster is so important. I mean, as you know, we've been campaigning for the Holocaust Memorial Centre there. We very much feel that it's important because of the connection between Parliament and what happens, that it should be close by. So yeah, we've been campaigning on that behalf, and let's hope after this lockdown that can move forward. I know there's mixed views about the location, but you know, being so close to Parliament and being the heart of Westminster, once people return, as we believe they will, clearly, then that's a clear place to be, and to keep the message clear.
A very strategic place, absolutely does. And you know, the old story of 2 Jews and 3 opinions. I don't think you'll ever get unanimity on anything, but I think you know, remembering the Holocaust, ensuring that the younger generation is aware, is important. I mean, we've seen a kind of resurgence of anti-Semitism even during this current crisis. People, when they're scared, they are prone, I think, to all manner of conspiracy theories. And certainly there's a narrative out there which is brutally anti-Semitic, anti-Israel even. I even heard it said, and this goes to show the depth of it, that yes, Israel might well develop the treatments or the vaccine to deal with corona, but that's only because they invented corona in the first place, to make the whole world beholden to Israel. That shows the depth of anti-Semitism that is still out there. So remembering the Holocaust and the lessons of that isn't just a history lesson, it's a current day lesson. And again, the work that you do in CUFI in exposing that anti-Semitism, even in the church, where perhaps it's very genteel form of anti-Semitism, where even those who adhere to it possibly don't even acknowledge or recognize it as anti-Semitism. You're there to expose that, to educate people, because I think many Christians aren't aware of the legacy of anti-Semitism within the church, which didn't begin with Hitler. It goes back much further than that. I think the job that you're doing is vital, and alongside physical monuments, you need to engage with actual people on the ground. And the work that you do in social media, as you've said, is of an order, of a scale, which I think is amazingly encouraging in terms of your reach. So education on the Holocaust is a vital aspect of the work that you are doing.
Thank you for that. Yeah, well, we will continue that, obviously. Our aim is to make sure that the message keeps going forth, and that we don't see a resurgence of that hatred that was there from before. But as you say, these are delicate times, and sadly, the Jewish community does tend to get blamed for most things. Totally wrongly so, but we will do everything we can to prevent a backlash from the Christian side. At least we will raise up our voice and make sure it's heard. Yeah. Well, thank you, Steven. It's been really enjoyable talking to you. I say we hope to get together in real life soon. And I say we'd very much like to be part of some of the things you continue to do. So keep up the good work. Well done for all you do.
Well, thank you, Des. Thank you for this opportunity. I value our friendship. I think it has deepened over the years, that trust, and just face to face, getting to know you and your family. It's important, sharing a meal with you, which we've done, both in your office and you come to London. It means a lot to me personally. Alongside the work that you're doing, that kind of personal friendship. So please God, soon we will meet up again. And thank you once again. And God bless to you, to your family, to all the supporters of CUFI UK. God bless you all at this time.
Yeah, well, God bless you, Stephen. Thank you very much. Take care.
Shalom. Bye-bye.
Bless you.